Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted Thursday, September 18, 2025, the committee resume its study of development of critical minerals in Canada. I would like to welcome our witnesses and thank them for their patience while we did committee business, and I'd like to make a few comments for the benefit of our witnesses. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking, and for those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. For those on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, either floor, English, or French, and for those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. And again, I'd like to welcome our witnesses. We have Eric Desolinier. Is that close? Desolinier, founder and president, chief executive officer of Nouveau Monde Graphite. Professor A.E. William Jones, from the Department of Earth and Planetary Scientists, McGill University. Olga Vasiokova, Research Associate, Department of Earth and Planetary Scientists, McGill University. And Carl Leberge, President and Chief Executive Officer of Saguenay Port Authority. And on Zoom, Louis Ouellette, President, Union des Préfets, Union des Préfets. You will each have 5 minutes or less for your opening remarks. Monsieur Desolinier, you have the floor, 5 minutes. And I apologize for mangling your name.
It is perfect. I've seen worse. Thank you very much, everyone, for hosting me today and allow me to discuss about this very important topic. So I'm Eric Desolinier, president, founder of Nouveau Monde Graphite. Nouveau Monde is a company started 14 years ago, right across the river in Gatineau. And the goal was to discover the next big graphite deposit, and we did that in 2015. We have now maybe about 110 employees, about 30 engineers, many PhDs, a lot of well-paid jobs, and we're planning once the project financing is completed and we have a final investment decision on both our projects to be over 500 direct employees in the company. We have as a shareholder 6 important insiders. Investissement Québec have 17%, Canada Growth Fund, 13 Investment, their first investment in a mining project. We have also Pallinger's Group, we have Mitsui & Co. from Japan, and we have Panasonic and General Motors as important shareholders as well in the company. So for a pre-revenue company, it's quite an accomplishment to have assembled such strategic shareholders. Donc les projets sur lesquels on travaille actuellement.
So the projects we're working on right now are major. The first is the Matawini mine, 2 hours north of Montreal in Saint-Michel-des-Saints. This is a project that has all its permits, agreements with First Nations have been signed. So following financing in the coming months, we'll be in a position to complete the construction of the Matawini mine and produce 106,000 tons of high-quality graphite and send this concentrate to our second project in Bécancour, Quebec. That's where we will process this product into another product for Panasonic and General Motors. And the third project that we acquired a big project in the North Shore near Manicouagan, a growth project for the future called Watman, where we can build something 5 times bigger than Matawane, the biggest graphite project being developed in the world.
So NMG, like since 14 years, I've been making all the different steps. So if you have questions on all the steps from early exploration to a discovery in 2015, on how to help relationship with community, with First Nation, how to help on permitting, we've been through all of this, how to deliver a viable feasibility study on critical mineral projects. We've done that in 2018 for the first time. Also, building the full process. It's a process that is 100% currently made in China. So how to develop this process locally. We've done that and during 4 years qualifying with Panasonic Energy to get the product on specs. So, and now we are in the project financing mode, how the next step could be very helpful from the government. In this step, helping the top line, securing the supply chain. This is really where we are at, being relevant in the product we do on value added for EV transition, but also now for other markets, because graphite is also useful in defense application and other strategic applications for our economy. So that's where we are, and we're quite happy to answer all questions from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Desaulniers. Your cell phone has been buzzing while you've been speaking, so if you don't mind just putting it, well, I would put it in your pocket or away from the microphone. It is hard on the interpreter's ears and sometimes our ears. So thank you for that. And now we will go on to Professor Williams Jones. You have 5 minutes or less.
Thank you. So I'm actually here to represent IEP, which is a small company operating out of Timmins, Ontario. They have an interesting prospect called Lackner Lake. It's interesting because it was explored back in the 1950s, a resource of something like 150 million tons of niobium, Nb2O5 at a grade of about 0.2 weight percent, was identified and then basically abandoned. The prospect also has tremendous potential for the rare earth elements. When I say that I'm representing them, I'm obviously a professor at McGill University. I don't have a consulting relationship with the company. In fact, our relationship is entirely a research relationship, which is funded by NSERC, in other words, funded by the federal government in a company-industry partnership. But they wanted me to represent them here to basically answer questions about the geology of the deposit. So my background is one in which I'm an individual who focuses on the processes that concentrate metals, and particularly critical metals, to economically extractable levels. That's where we're coming from. Our research group pioneered the field of rare earth element ore deposit, or ore genesis, we'd keep it. For example, our work led to the discovery of Strange Lake, which I'm sure you're all aware of because of Torngat Metals. We were also involved in the discovery of Nechalacho, another rare earth element deposit in the Northwest Territories. Most recently, the scandium deposit at Crater Lake. We've also worked on Ashram. So we've worked on some of the major deposits. Okay, so that's the background. Why are we interested in Lackner Lake? And the reason is quite simple. The deposits that I've been talking about have a huge infrastructure problem. They're all in the far north. And your challenge really is to basically provide the infrastructure that you need to actually extract the metals. And I think this is a huge challenge. And what I notice is that there's been comparatively little exploration of systems that could be really exciting close to major centers. In the case of Lackner Lake, the deposit that we're interested in, it's right close. It's something like 100 kilometers from Timmins. So it's sitting in a major mining district. No infrastructure issues there at all. I'll just close with the observation that if we're looking for rare earth elements, or if we're looking for niobium, what you want to look for is carbonatite complexes. And what you have there is a carbonatite complex. If you looked at the whole story globally, what you would actually find is that carbonatite complexes are responsible for over 90% of the world's niobium and over 60% of the world's rare earth elements. You want to find a deposit, go look at carbonatites. But they're underexplored, and particularly in the south of the country. For some damn reason, we geologists love to go north. It's fun. And I'll shut up now.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. And now we'll go on to Monsieur Laberge. You have the floor for 5 minutes or less.
Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Merci beaucoup pour...
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for this invitation to speak with you today. My name is Carl Laberge. I'm President Chief Executive Officer of Saguenay Port Authority, which is a Canadian port authority. We were created by the Government of Canada. We have assets that belong to the federal government in an independent way, like other large ports in this country. One of the specific features is that the Port of Saguenay originally was located in the downtown of Chicoutimi and was relocated in the mid-'80s. So we were relocated on a site, a greenfield, with a lot of land around the port so that we could develop industrial activity sooner or later. Another feature is that we're in the Saguenay Fjord, which is very deep. So we have capacity among the best in the world because of the depth. So we can have very big ships in the port of Saguenay. Another feature is that we're on the Saguenay River that goes toward northern Quebec and linked to the St. Lawrence. So we're well located geographically for mining development sectors. We're working with many companies that have projects in the mining sector. In the last few years, we developed a lot of infrastructure. So we were linked to railways in 2015, so that's relatively recent. We are currently building a conveyor system, mainly for mining projects, metallurgical projects, and products, in order to transport a lot of these products. And we're working very actively with the government of Quebec to develop industrial land around the port. So right now, we have 1,200 hectares of industrial land around the port. That's one of the biggest port industrial parks in Canada. We're developing it with Quebec, with the city of Saguenay as an investor and a partner. And the port is currently linked to a railway network that goes towards the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, so also Chibougamau-Chapet, and that mining sector, where there are many developed projects, especially for critical minerals and strategic minerals, they could be linked. They used to be with Abitibi. So with a railway that is existing between Brevet and Chapet, it would be possible in the future, if that section of railway was put back in service, we could link the Abitibi with Chibougamau and get directly to the Port of Saguenay, which has the capacity to develop and process those minerals, because there is land available around the port. There are very good logistics, be it railway, but maritime as well, in order to transport cargo, especially mines. So we've been developing these projects for quite some time. We're prepared to start the work very quickly next year. So there's an opportunity there that is very significant, and we can do this. So I'll stop there, and I'd be pleased to answer your questions. Thank you.
Colleagues, we have Mr. Louis Ouellette on the screen, but unfortunately he doesn't have the approved headset.
J'ai un casque d'écoute approuvé.
So we're going to invite him back, but that's the bad news. The good news is we're going to give these 4 witnesses our full attention for the next hour and a half or so. So we'll have you back, Monsieur Ouellet.
Excusez-moi, Monsieur le Président, mais j'ai
I'm
reçu
sorry,
un-
Mr. Chair, but I did get an approved headset.
Yeah, so we can't.
That your it's
casque approuvé par le bureau du député du local.
Oui, il l'est pas en fin de compte. C'est ce qu'on me dit. Ouais. Donc, on va vous réinviter. Soyez sans crainte. Je vais vous envoyer une nouvelle invitation. Vous allez pouvoir comparaître. On va avoir le temps de vous envoyer un casque.
I think we're through our witnesses. Yes. Colleagues, because we're having one panel of now 4 witnesses for an hour and a half, would the committee agree to have 2 rounds of 6 minutes for each party and then the subsequent rounds as usual? I see agreement, and so we'll see how far we get. But Mrs. Stubbs, would you like to lead off?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses for being here and for our virtual witness for attempting to join us. I just wish that there weren't time limits so that we could ask questions of all of you and have very substantive conversations about all these important issues. I'll start with some questions to Professor Williams-Jones, and I know that I have colleagues who will ask questions of other witnesses later on in the meeting, and look forward to all of your information. So critical to natural resources development, which of course underpins the entire Canadian economy, something that we on this side certainly have consistently argued. Professor, you talked a little bit about the geological challenges faced by Canada. I wonder if you want to expand on the geological challenges that Canada faces in terms of establishing secure supplies of critical minerals. And in doing that, if you do have any added comment on whether or what the federal government can do to help advance that development and what barriers exist to exploration and development.
Okay, I'll start off with an example. I made the point that carbonatites, which are basically complexes made up of calcium carbonate and magnesium carbonate. I won't go into the details of the geology, but it's a particular type of geological setting. We probably have about 90 of them in the country. Most of them are remote. Some of them are actually fairly close to infrastructure, and they're grossly underexplored. If I think of the one that is among the carbonatites that is best explored at the moment, it's probably the Ashram deposit in northern Quebec. And again, a resource has been defined, a company's got in there, but your challenge now is to provide the infrastructure that you need to get it out of there. So then the next challenge is, how do I tell the difference between a good carbonatite and a bad carbonatite? We've got 90 of them, and it turns out that our research has shown that there are key signatures that allow us to actually distinguish between carbonatites that have the potential for a mineral resource. I don't want to bore you with a lot of science, but let's take this idea very simply. If I take a liquid, carbonate liquid, and I look at the concentration of niobium and rare earths in it, it turns out that this liquid dissolves huge concentrations of these elements. So our challenge is actually to get it out. And how do we get it out? Our model, the model that we've been developing, shows that if these carbonatites interact with their host rocks, the carbonate part is consumed, and you end up with a residue that concentrates these rare metals. So we can actually go in now and we can start to see the signatures that will distinguish between fertile ones and barren ones. The whole challenge for the exploration community is we haven't been exploring for these elements for a long time. If we talk about copper or nickel, we've been doing it for years and years, so we have good exploration models. we don't for the rare earths and niobium. And I'm suggesting that our group is developing them. I'm excited about Lackner Lake simply because we see the right signatures there and it is close to infrastructure.
So far, would you say it's fair to suggest then the government is speaking effectively a lot about the concept and the ambition of developing Canadian critical minerals and rare earth metals, but so far have not done enough to advance and facilitate that exploration and development?
Okay, so I'm going to go out on a limb here. I was actually quite surprised when I learned that the federal government, I woke up in bed one morning and there was Mark Carney in Germany announcing that Torngat Metals was going to ship rare earth elements to Germany. And I woke up with quite a surprise since I actually started my career on Strange Lake. And I know where it is. The logistics are huge. And so I'm wondering where all the money is coming from to actually build this project. But that's me being surprised.
No, I think that's you being an expert and very clear about the realities of competitiveness between Canada and the other major mining jurisdictions around the world that don't have the same kinds of challenges that Canada does in terms of distance, climate, lack of ability to be able to develop 24/7 access, land access issues, uncertainty in policy, and red tape that blocks exploration and then, in the long run, development.
So what we need to actually do is consciously support companies that are exploring interesting properties in the southern part of the country. Let's really focus on deposits where we have infrastructure already. And there will be good ones and bad ones, but at least put your focus there instead of putting your focus in the far north, is my simple-minded view.
Interesting. Then do you have views about, and gosh, we've got to think about it. It was this same government, of course, almost 5 years ago now that launched their much vaunted critical mineral strategy and then announced it again a couple of years later and missed some elements that clearly should be on the list. Would it be your view then that that strategy hasn't really done very much to expand the development, exploration, or export of Canadian critical minerals and rare earth
And I
metals?
think that would be my view. I think that what the government could do now is really invest in exploration in the southern part of the country.
Are there any other measures, regulatory or fiscal measures, that you think would help attract and expand critical mineral development in Canada, especially compared to other competitive jurisdictions?
Quick response,
You're
Professor.
probably putting me out on a limb there. That's sort of way outside my expertise. I know how these things concentrate. I think I know the sorts of systems that we should be looking at. But what other attraction? Well, I'd like to see more money going into research on these things. For example, I said our group has just recently developed this model for niobium, and prior to that, we developed models for the rare earth elements. But the number of research groups around the world is extremely limited. Number of groups that are really doing cutting-edge research. And yeah, I'm probably tooting my own horn here, but I would argue that our group is leading it in Canada and probably around the world.
Thank you.
I hope you'll also submit written.
On to Mr. Gay. Mr. Gay.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Mr. Desaulniers. Mr. Desaulniers, two completely different questions that I'd like to hear you on. First of all, you offered to share lessons learned when it comes to working with First Nations. What could the government do to help companies like yours in the future in their dealings with First Nations? Should we have specific agreements already in place? Is it participation? Is it royalty that's needed? What's your experience? If you could share that with us. What could the federal government do? That's the first question. Second question, talk to me about the transportation logistics between your city or town for your second project, the processing project, and how this will be shipped. Thank you for your questions, Mr. Gay. First of all, the relations with the First Nations is something that takes decades to establish. We've been doing it for a little more than a decade. We started our discussions with the Manawan community of Atikamekw. In December 2024, we finally got an agreement with the Atikamekw Nation. We have employees, we have people, we're sponsors for most events over there, but what really made a difference is that we were able to put in place two important measures. One, provided important economic benefits for the community. That was very important. And we allow them to develop in a way that allows them to work on the project, not just jobs, but contracts. So that was a very important point for the Manawan community. Not just look at this project go by without developing expertise. We really developed for a lot of hours and years, what could work in our projects, network with others. Any federal program that allows First Nations to take equity participation. I know there's a new project in place that's a very good initiative that allows them to develop concrete expertise and have competitive advantages when they bid. Maybe they don't all have this kind of expertise. I think these two aspects really allowed us to go to another level with the community. There's many other things that allowed us to do this. We were we were present during those discussions. We respected their culture. But fundamentally, you have to have something to offer the community so that they can contribute and not just watch. That was the game changer last December, that we had incentives like that. And we'll continue to work with programs put in place to have equity participation with other communities too, with whom we're working. The Innu on the North Shore, the Walimak, the Abenaki, near Bécancour. So those are conversations that help us a lot. And secondly, about the logistics, we are lucky to be in Saint-Michel-des-Saints. We're 2 hours away from the project. So our project in Saint-Michel-des-Saints is one where we're spoiled, really. You can listen to what Professor Williams-Jones says. We are lucky to have an exceptional mine close to these centers, and access is a very important aspect, but we have support from over 80% of the local community that sees the benefits of the project because it's close by. And between the two sites, there'll be paved roads, about 10 trucks between the two. Compared to the forestry industry, it's not considered a major use of the road. It's pretty simple in our case between the two projects when it comes to the logistics compared to other mining projects. And so make it or leave it, take it or leave it, but in our case, the infrastructure already exists. Thank you very much. Well then, Mr. Desaulniers, how will this be shipped? What kind of contract do you have about this offtake? How will this be shipped? Well, out of our 100,000 tons of concentrate in Saint-Michel-des-Saints, what we were considering was most of it would go to electric vehicles market, lithium-ion batteries with Panasonic Energy and General Motors and its supply chain, with GM's supply chain. Historically, there is a considerable market for graphite outside of these lithium batteries, about 150 clients that already buy in Canada in the past 30 years. So Canada is already the only producer in the G7 for over 100 years. So I think we're the only significant new project in the G7. So it's important for us to diversify our supply and develop not only lithium batteries, but we have agreements with Panasonic and GM, but we have to serve other strategic sectors. So we've been working with Track 6, for instance, for refractory bricks, which is the biggest market for natural graphite. We have direct relations with many clients in strategic applications, be it electronics, lubricants, carbon rushes, electric motors have little graphite brushes. Those are all important applications for our economy, but they're not big volumes that would allow to finance a mine. So how do we ensure that we work with all these clients? Well, that's something we're working on right now.
No, time's up and I'm sure we'll come back to you later, Monsieur Gay. Monsieur Simard.
Merci, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Simard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Mr. Laberge, you made a very good presentation about the enviable position of Port Saguenay. What the committee is trying to establish is how we could facilitate the deployment of critical minerals. What kind of infrastructure would be needed to deploy that file? I do understand the criticism by Mr. Williams-Jones, but I'm not as pessimistic as he is. I remain optimistic in the sense that I believe that the Port of Saguenay could play an important role to eliminate that enclave for many mines in the north of Ontario and Quebec who are close to a railway that need to be rehabilitated, mind you. But I'd like you to educate the committee about the reality of what Port Saguenay could provide. I'd invite you to table a map or any map you already have with mining projects that are close by. What's interesting for us is the role you can play in the development of this whole sector. Thank you very much for the question. The role we can play is a very important one. We talked about logistics earlier, the importance of logistics and infrastructure, the Port of Saguenay. We have objectives in Canada to diversify our economy and reach markets, not just in the U.S., let me put it that way, but markets abroad. Necessarily, they will be reached by ships, so ports are very important for that. The Port of Saguenay, because of its location, is at a real advantage. The advantages we have is the geography and the industrial land that's close by. We're aiming to have value-added processing as much as possible in Canada. That's what we can offer, which is quite unique when it comes to the Port of Saguenay. We'll piggyback on other infrastructure too. Another one of our advantages is we're linked to a northern existing railway line, existing in part at least. It can be put back in service with relatively low costs if you compare it to other options we've heard about lately to reach the north, and would be integrated in a vision that was already put in place by communities, especially in the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. There are improvements that were proposed in past years to improve the fluidity at a low cost. In the north of Quebec, the same is true. We talked about putting back into service a trunk line. That's something that was proposed by the Cree community some years ago, to put that back into service. If we go a little further, in Abitibi, railways are very well connected with northern Ontario, and we could optimize those sectors too. So when you look at this from bird's eye view, we do see a northern corridor that exists in part, but could be improved and optimized with a little bit of investment and cooperation from different parties that would enable us to open up a large part of northern Quebec and Ontario and allow for more mining projects in those northern parts to have access as an exit port that we're putting in place in the Port of Saguenay, something really integrated in terms of infrastructure and transport logistics, processing and shipping to markets in a very rapid and competitive way. Thank you very much. I'd like to bring you back to something. I did other studies on critical minerals, but the important thing is energy. Always energy. Access to hydroelectricity, gas. What's the situation of the Port of Saguenay? Perhaps you could briefly explain the possibility of being linked to natural gas and hydro lines. Yes, thank you for the question. Indeed, when we're talking about other advantages, we have the industrial site, but it's also located in the city of Saguenay, so within the distance of homes, but also quite close to get to workers, to a labor force that's quite considerable in the city of Saguenay, a major city. We have access to the energy network. Processing plants for mining products need energy, be it electrical energy or natural gas often for processing. And we in the Saguenay are lucky enough to be linked exceptionally to this network, positioned especially in the Hydro-Quebec network between the major northern production centers, North Shore, James Bay, and big consumer zones in the St. Lawrence. So we're well located. There's a capacity for interconnection that's significant. So that's a big advantage, is our electrical capacity. And we are linked to the natural gas system, so we have the opportunity to offer that as well.
On to Monsieur Martel.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Leberge, what are the possibilities for developing the port to support Canada and Quebec's economic growth in the future? Well, as I said, the opportunities for development are enormous. When it comes to economic spin-offs, we're looking at 1,200 hectares of industrial land to be developed with mining potential that's immense in the north of the region. Right now, already, we're in discussion with certain companies that are well known for phosphate to get industrial processing there. 2 phosphate projects want to build plants in our backyard, and lithium as well, projects for copper and other sectors as well for processing would be in that sector. We will invest in infrastructure to be ready, to be better positioned than anyone else, any other country, in order to welcome those projects. But what we're really aiming for is private investment. Stimulate that by offering them good infrastructure, be it transport or industrial amenities. There would be the port itself, but whatever is developed after will be very important, very strategic. Thank you. Mr. Deslauriers, my next question is for you. You say that you have social acceptability. That's a major development. You have social acceptability. Why did it take so long? That's major. You say it's been 15 years. How come it took so long? I wouldn't say I have it. It's something you have to work for every day, every month. It's a bit like a marriage. You have to make sure the community still wants you around. But since 2013, we've been there. What helps social acceptability is we're present in the community. I'm there with my family, my wife and I. We go every Christmas. Not one of my children doesn't want to go. We are involved in local organizations. We're now one of the biggest employers in the region, but that was built up over time. We had 2 surveys in 2018, 2019. It's been a long time since we haven't had another, but we had 83% support, 82%, but we always had 9% of people who didn't agree with my project. You have to respect those people. We don't want to create any losers in these. We want to go there with all our engineers and understand how we can develop these things as well as possible for the community. So we have environmental initiatives, be it progressive restoration of the site, 100% electric mine developed with Caterpillar. We offered everyone within a radius of 1 kilometer of any structure with voluntary expropriation of their property if they were worried. So we thought outside the box, and that allowed us to make sure that there were no real losers. Mr. Deslauriers, you know that you can never have unanimity. You say you conduct surveys, 90%, 10%. It's impossible to get unanimity. So what I understand is if there are 5 people who disagree and 800 who agree, the project can't go ahead. We have a very good process in Quebec. 9 or 10 months between the time that we tabled our feasibility study, our impact study, and when we got our decree, including the BAP hearings, because we took this seriously. The first time we presented a project that showed all the Government of Quebec experts that we deserved that decree. We got that decree in February 2021, and for the past 7 years, we've started construction of different sites. But what would allow us to go to the next level is to complete the marketing strategy. It's a critical mineral. It's not like gold or copper or basic minerals. It's really how we avoid the risk, how we sell this to buyers who pay a reasonable price. So that aspect remains to be made concrete so that we can attract the necessary capital to build. You know that volume is important. Volume is important. Will you have sufficient volume? That's always a question we wonder about. Will competition with other players will be fierce if other players see that you have a lot of potential, but they're going to play with the prices there. They can reduce their prices or whatever. Do you fear that kind of competition from abroad? Well, right now, 100% of the competition when it comes to lithium, the graphite for lithium ion, not traditional graphite. There's already a market that's already there, but the market for batteries, which is dominated by China, well, the Chinese understood that in the past 5 years, yes, there's great demand, but they're also building a supply chain exceptionally well and fast. So there's perhaps competition in bad faith there. The U.S. government decided there'd be an anti-dumping tariff, 105%, which will be made official later this year. So there are mechanisms in place that allow us to be competitive vis-a-vis our American clients mainly. We'd be very happy if there was something similar in Canada that allowed us to keep our product in Canada. But there is competition. It's a market volume. It will generate volume, but smaller margins. And that's why we need more strategic markets. But
we'll go to Mr. Hogan for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci à tous ici.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank everyone here. This question is for Mr. Laberge. You talked about private investment. One of the challenges we heard about the interpreter apologizes but did not hear the question.
A clear proponent for the Northern Corridor. Oh, merci. Merci.
Oui, j'avais très bien compris.
Yes, I had understood. We are comparing this project with others that were already announced, where it's easy to identify a promoter. It's a mineral or mining project. It's a nuclear project. When you make that comparison with a project you see over hundreds of kilometers with many participants, it's difficult to identify a single private investor who will take on a project of that size with national scope. that's really the case right now. So what we see is a lot of private investment, but from many different parties who will be involved. When it comes to the port, we work with terminal operators who are private companies and with various investors. When we get to railways, well, the railways will be called upon to play a role. I talked about First Nations communities. Right now, they are the promoters of part of the project, and they will be involved. We see mining companies, who will be users, payers, who will contribute as well. So what we're seeing is not just one private investor, but many private investors who will have to work together with governments as well, who will have to play a federation role. So because this strategic corridor can be put in place and organized and funded, there's a level of risk involved. So there has to be a financial structure that is more complex than when you have one single investor in a complex project like this.
Question for Professor Williams-Jones. I totally hear you on the North and perhaps your, my words, North skepticism in terms of development. I'm a little more enthusiastic about the long-term possibilities, and I want to make sure the government is keeping an eye on it. I'm curious, from your view, if you think there are near-North opportunities or developments in the North you would support if forced to do so. Which ones do you think are the good ones, and how would you do it?
So right now, if we talk about lithium, because of the James Bay hydro projects of the 70s, we actually do have roads that get up there. And so we should really be promoting those projects strongly, because that would be an example of deposits in the North, and there's quite a lot of exploration going on at the present time. So yes, I think that where we've got at least partial infrastructure, we should really promote, and that'd be a good example. Could I use this as an opportunity to talk about metallurgy? We're talking about these rare metals, these critical metals. What we haven't talked about is how easy it is to, or how difficult it is to actually extract it. It's one thing finding the deposits, it's another thing exploiting them profitably. And I'll give you a really good example that's close to us in Quebec. It's Neobec, which produces niobium. Do you know that only 59% of that niobium is being recovered? 40% is actually going into waste. And this is a huge challenge. If we start to talk about Strange Lake again, yeah, we talked about the infrastructure. What we didn't talk about was how easy or how difficult it is to actually extract the metals from the minerals. And so, yes, the Chinese have developed technology for bionobo, if we're talking about the rare earth elements, and they've got just a couple of minerals that they're working with. I go to some of these deposits in Canada. The mineralogy, in other words, where the metals are, is quite complex. And so the federal government, in my view, needs to be investing money into actually trying to improve the level of extraction. And I've given you the Neobec example. We could go to, we're talking about all these lithium projects. My own research group is heavily involved in lithium. And what we've actually seen is that there are serious metallurgical problems, and there could be real investment in the metallurgy. So let's not forget the metallurgy. Sorry I got off track, but I think this is important for all of you.
Okay, just 30 seconds.
Okay, access to capital. What can the government be doing in that space? That is something that's been a common theme in the committee meetings so far. To anyone who wants to take it.
I think you guys are much more qualified. I'm just a lonely scientist.
That's my job to daily basis to raise money. I think the challenge really, it's not, sometimes it's geology, but we always have somebody interested about geology if they are properly funded. The challenge is to make sure the capital markets stay interested in critical minerals all the time, not in a very cyclical way. Because I remember too, Questrare developing Strange Lake many years ago, and then rare earth wasn't interesting for capital market for a long time. Graphite, we had the chance to be part of a lithium-ion battery. I would prefer it being called graphite batteries. It would be more clear that graphite is the biggest component of the battery, but at least we had this push.
Thank you. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you. Monsieur Samar for 6 minutes.
Merci.
Monsieur William Jones, what you said was very important about metallurgy, and I'd like our analysts to take that into consideration in the report. Last week, we received a consortium on rare earth. They're trying to reduce risk and see how they can develop technology that would help the whole sector. I'm just saying this for your information. I'd like to concentrate on Mr. Laberge. I haven't finished with you. Earlier, what Corey said was very important. Who can be the promoter of a project for a corridor? I understand that you're at the end of that infrastructure, and I also understand that you're a federal organization. You belong to the federal government. You have land that belongs to the federal government. But could you explain to the committee what are the demands to make the Port de Saguenay appropriate? What investment would be needed for the existing infrastructure so that it can become the real cargo point for minerals going to Europe? Yes, what we need in more detail and what we've been working on for many years are two main elements. First of all, improving our maritime capacity. So for that, that's a project with some warehousing, $150 million worth. We got support from the government of Quebec for that. They announced a subsidy of $20 million about 2 years ago. We're in discussion with the Infrastructure Bank to get a loan for that project. And in the Transport Canada Commercial Corridor, we wanted a subsidy of 50% for that federal infrastructure for the port. So that's one part. And we're prepared to start that work next year because we're quite advanced when it comes to environmental assessment and engineering. We could do it by 2026. The other part is developing the industrial land, giving companies access to basic services they need, electricity, drinking water, sewage, fire protection, and so forth, so that they can get the basic services in order to be ready for construction. That investment, there's already money that was put forward by the Quebec government about 3 years ago as loans with Investment Quebec. And in the same talks we had with the Infrastructure Bank to see whether they could join us in this initiative to support infrastructure for critical minerals. Well, we'd like the federal government to get involved too. That includes funding or financing this basic infrastructure, but connecting us to high-tension wires with Hydro-Quebec, and the natural gas line, which has to be extended to go to the site itself. Thank you very much, Mr. Laberge. That's much appreciated. Mr. Desaulniers, I'd like to put the same question I put to witnesses last week. What the government particularly appreciates is whatever doesn't cost it anything. So what regulatory measures could accelerate the deployment of the critical minerals file? I can't tell you that we could overlook environmental issues, but some of them are debatable. I'd like to hear what you have to say about this. Are you prepared to table documents that could make it easier for us to write the report? Thank you for the question. What's really critical for critical minerals to fund a project is there's a whole ecosystem when it comes to copper, gold, and basic metals. There are major companies that acquire interesting projects. That makes these junior companies good for investors. There's a whole ecosystem because that commodity can be transported easily. But what's really important for these critical minerals is to understand the sale price of these minerals and why and how they're purchased. So we want long-term contracts that will reassure our investors with Panasonic and GM. Those took us years to have. This was very important in our structure, our pricing structure. We compete with the Chinese, but what will allow us to do it without spending a penny is understanding where these minerals are going. Where does niobium go, or graphite go, or lithium go outside of lithium-ion batteries? And make sure that is transparent for investors. How do you invite or attract capital investors in things other than gold, let's say? There has to be supply contracts, contracts for difference, or various structures that allow mineral companies to have long-term supplies that allow them to fund these projects through capital markets and not always go to government.
Our colleagues, we have in the third round, which will be approximately 23 minutes long, will take us to the bottom of the hour. We can have that as our final round of questions. Everyone gets a chance. Or we could add an additional 3 speakers at the end, one from each party. What is your wish? Finish at the bottom of the hour or extend? I think the witnesses have got a pretty good working over today, but it's up to you. We've had a few stops and starts, which is the reason we're... So stop at 5:30 or continue? Continue, okay. Continue. All right, we're going to then, Mr. Martel and Tucker are going to split their time for this first round.
And how long is this?
This is 2.5 minutes each, 5 minutes.
So 5 minutes. And
2.5, yeah.
And then we'll have one round at the end again.
Correct.
Area suggestion?
Yeah,
Of how
so
long?
there's 5 speakers in this third round and 3 speakers in the last round.
And how long in the third round?
Third round, 5 minutes. No, this round.
No, here. So there's 5 minutes and then
Yeah.
another 5 minutes.
Yeah. The Conservative and Liberal parties get 5 minutes each. Mr. Simard gets 2.5. Sorry?
That's not fair.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, so 5 minutes for Mr. Tucker and Martel, 5 minutes J.P. Denko, 2.5 Monsieur Simard, Mr. Martel for 5, Mr. McKinnon for 5, and then we have an additional round if the committee so wishes. All right? And that's 5, 5, and 2.5 again. So let us proceed. Mr. Tucker.
Thank you very much for our witnesses being here today. It's a wonderful opportunity for Canadians to learn a little bit about our different facilities throughout Canada. I was very interested in reading the Port of Segway annual report of 2024, and I understand that there was a plan back in 2014 for an LNG plant at the port. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And that was to move roughly 11 million tons of liquefied natural gas. It was being proposed back a decade ago, and the fear was, or that this was going to kneecap our economy, and if we didn't have the ability to export other than to the States. And then fast forward to today, and unfortunately what's going on in Ukraine, we have allies that can't wean themselves off Putin's dictator natural gas, and that has not helped the conflict in Ukraine. So this project, though, why was it killed?
What happened is that, at the end of the process, environmental process, they didn't get the permit they needed from the provincial government first, and after that from the federal government.
So it was political intervention that hurt this, be it for whatever ideology reasons that ultimately killed this LNG plant that would have been very, very beneficial to the world and for the Western countries, which is a shame. Also in the report, there's a line here that you guys are in the coal business as well, correct?
Yeah, a little bit for some customer.
So there's 43,552 tons that go through. Is that import, I'm assuming?
It is import for its metallurgical coal. It's for a customer that use it for metallurgical use in the region.
Where is that coal coming from?
It's coming from Toledo.
To
Toledo through the port of Toledo, and
from where? What country? Sorry.
In the U.S.
U.S.
Yeah.
So we're importing coal from the U.S. A whole bunch of it, 43,000. While this port, not your fault, but because of political reasons, couldn't export liquefied natural gas to our allies in Europe. That's all the questions I have. I'm going to pass my time over to Mr. Martel.
Mr. Martel.
Merci. Monsieur Delaurier.
Mr. Delaurier, when will you be ready for extraction? We're in talks about financing, so we hope to have the financing by the end of the year or early next year. For the Matawini project, we'll need 24 months for construction, 6 months for startup. So middle of 2028, in the best of all worlds, that's when we'll start production on a large scale. What might prevent you from doing that? Well, right now it's financing. Make sure that we have all the supply agreements by this fall to go to our lenders with conviction and be convincing to get the permits granted. Can you tell me which one is the most problematic to obtain? Which one is most difficult when it comes to delays? I'd say the one that took the longest time was our provincial decree, a significant mining project. When you're affecting the environment, a lot of things to check. There has to be an assessment, 10,000 pages of engineering that we published in 2019. It took us about 19 months following the tabling of this study to cooperate with the Quebec Environment Ministry. So for mining projects, it's a long environmental process. It's very serious, and that usually the most complex. Do you feel there's duplication between the province and the federal government at that level? It could have happened in our case if we didn't have any fish habitat to consider. That would have meant duplication in many projects, but not ours. Thank you.
We're on to Mr. Danko. Mr. Danko, you have 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Very much enjoying this afternoon's discussion. My first question, I think, is primary for Monsieur Desolinier. Just going big picture. So it seems the most of our discussion this afternoon has been on critical minerals. You've mentioned EV transition and other markets. There's also been discussions about the market for batteries in China. But it seems to me that the basic premise of the discussion, what is driving the need for Canada to leverage its critical minerals market, is that transition of the economy away from fossil fuels to an electric economy, and that is happening globally. This is not an ideological question or a political question, but from your perspective, what is driving that market, which in turn drives the basic premise of developing Canada's critical minerals?
You're right that in our specific market on graphite, the growth on the EV sector and also battery energy storage solution, BESS, that are using the same lithium-ion batteries, are the two main reasons that justify a large graphite mine like the one we are building. If this market wasn't growing at the pace it is growing, we would not need as big of a mine. We would need probably 30,000 tons of graphite, as we are already producing in Canada since many decades. But now we are building 100,000 ton mine, and we have a mine that is 5 times the size in the pipeline to really cope with this potential growth we have in this EV sector, EV and battery energy storage, and especially that all the G7 countries need at least one alternative to the domination from China. So we don't want to change all what China is supplying to our market. It would be unrealistic to do that in the time frame we have. However, we need to have this safe alternative in case those supply chains are disrupted.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. Is your understanding that transition away from fossil fuels is a global trend, that basically around the world, the major economies are transitioning away from fossil fuel, which is driving this economic growth?
Yes, it used to be even leading here in North America. Now it's not the case. The Asian markets are leading this transition. Since over 12 months, more than 50% of the passenger cars sold in China are EV. And now they are getting into the truck. The shipping industry is now 20% of the trucks sold are EV. So they're really going after the fossil fuel economy because obviously they don't have any. So they want to decouple from that. And in Europe also it's over 20% penetration. Now in the US it slowed down obviously, but this is seen as very temporary because the rest of the world is going EV and battery storage, that's for sure.
Thank you. Switching gears to talk about the port a little bit, because I'm from Hamilton. We have the Port of Hamilton in Oshawa, which is the largest port on the Great Lakes on the St. Lawrence Seaway. My understanding of the port operations is we've talked about what we're going to be shipping out, but we haven't talked about the other side of the equation, what we're bringing in. So for the port to operate efficiently, what are the opportunities for imports into Canada from the port?
You're right. It could work the other way around also. We're targeting a lot of export because of the opportunities we have actually in the mining sector especially, but the port actually is importing quite a lot of material to feed the industry we have around, especially in the aluminum sector or for the forest industry. There's some inbound material that you need. So in the future, we are developing that industrial zone that will support critical and strategic mineral development, but that could develop other development as well, as we've been doing in the past years in the region, as an example of the aluminum industry where we don't have the basic material that we are importing. So it could work both ways effectively, and having those good infrastructure could feed the region, but could go far greater west also to help the rest of the country as a part of a system, especially also. And the other thing is that you're mentioning the Port of Hamilton. We like the Port of Hamilton. We're good friends with you guys. And we like to work with the Great Lakes. And one of the particularity that we have is because we are able to take the very large ship at the Port of Saguenay, we are doing some transshipment operation with the Great Lakes. So the smaller ship that can go in the locks are going to the Saguenay port, then transferring into ocean-going vessel, for example. So we're working together.
Thank you. So up next, Mr. Simard, followed by Monsieur Martel, and then Ron McKinnon. 2.5 minutes for you, Monsieur Simard.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your explanations, Mr. Laberge. When it comes to the strategic position, you were essential for the aluminum industry in my riding. We're also components for wind energy. When it comes to the strategic issues for military needs, you're near the Bagotville military base. I think you can also play a role in that. So perhaps you could give us a bit of explanations about that. Thank you very much for the question. Yes, indeed. That's one of the industrial sectors targeted, the defense sector. It's become fashionable, economically speaking. The reason is simply that because we're developing a world-class site, quite simply, with an important logistics hub. but also because we're in a sector that is within spitting distance of population centers, so maybe we're in a better position. We're close to one of the biggest military bases in the country, Bagotville. There's major investment going on there right now for rapid deployment forces and aircraft. The proximity of the port to this neighbor, we can be a support to them. When you're talking about industrial development, there's qualified labor force here. There are retirees from the armed forces that have military experience, and that's important in that as well. So we think that in a world where we want to include these critical minerals and strategic infrastructure, shipbuilding within the perimeter of defense, the Port of Saguenay is playing in that league. It's very well positioned to help the country accomplish and reach those targets when it comes to investments and real achievements for defense.
Mr. Laberge. On to Monsieur Martel, followed by Monsieur McKinnon, 5 minutes each.
Merci.
Thank you. Mr. Laberge, I think you also worked with the shipbuilding industry, the Davie shipyard. What did that involve? What's the relationship between the Port of Saguenay and the shipbuilding industry? Well, there are regional companies that had construction and built ships, that built modules of ships. It's kind of like a Lego game, if I can put it that way. They constructed these modules that were transformed at the port, put on barges to be assembled at the Davie shipyard. So that's a role we played in the past. We did that in our port with upgrading of the infrastructure we're doing now in industrial capacity. We're still working with those companies and with Davie in order to help them for future contracts, to help our Coast Guard and perhaps military vessels as well would participate in that kind of shipbuilding. Thank you for your question. Mr. Williams-Jones. Mining projects take a long time. Where I have a problem is these things take so long, 20 years. I can't believe that we can't reduce the time required. I can't believe it. How come? There are other situations. I know there are many steps to go through, but we're losing our people. They're going to choose somewhere else. What can we do to keep them? What can we do to reduce the time needed? The big problem is when we start this, it takes a lot of time to develop a resource. That's the first step. And of course, there's a lot of legislation about the environment. That takes a lot of time because a lot of studies have to be conducted. It's not clear to me how we can reduce the time easily. If you look at China, they're starting. How do you do this exploration? They have a huge advantage. They're prepared to take the risk. In our system, it's far harder for companies to take those risks. There are a lot of obstacles that we face now. Perhaps there are things that the government could do to reduce that. Examine all the regulations about exploration standards. Perhaps something can be cut that would have no impact on the environment, but part of the problem started in the 90s. There was a huge problem In Indonesia, a small company, Briex, broke all the rules, and there was a huge disaster. I don't know if you're aware of the Briex affair, but a lot of people bought shares to make a lot of money on this huge resource. Even a lot of companies. I'm mixing up my French and English here. But this is a problem. We have these regulations to control the mining sector, and perhaps we could reduce a few of those regulations. In mining projects, Mr. Deslauriers,
C'est-tu viable?
is it viable for a processing plant? Yes, in our case, it would be viable, but not. Would have to be smaller, not 100 million tons, but 30,000. But you need the lithium-ion battery market to sell it to China.
Leading this round, our third round, Mr. McKinnon, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So my questions are for Professor Williams-Jones and Dr. Vasiukova. Professor, you spoke of the need to be close to infrastructure. You mentioned, of course, Letna Lake, which is far from close to infrastructure, and Ashram, which is close. I guess what kind of infrastructure are we looking at? What's the scale of it? And in particular, I mean, that's an easier question than the one I'm going to really ask you. So you spoke of the importance of concentration of these ores in terms of making it economically viable for extraction. Do these extractions happen at site, or is this part of the infrastructure you need to build? And how are they powered? Do you need more electrical power? Do you need more gas power? Whatever. So there's a huge question for you, and do your best.
Okay, so very quickly, first of all, obviously your first problem is transportation of the ore to somewhere where we can actually do a lot of refining. And then the energy. Clearly, we have to concentrate the elements of interest at site. We've got to do as much as we can to reduce the mass of material that is actually shipped out. So those are the two initial problems, and that's energy and transportation. And the next problem then is how can we actually go about reducing the amount of material that we actually need to ship out? And I pointed to the metallurgical side. Part of that metallurgical work has to be done on site. We have to reduce that material, and you've got to really invest in research to actually develop the methods to extract successfully. And the problem with these critical metals that we're talking about, we don't have the years of experience that we've had with the base metals and precious metals and so on. We're in new territory, and so we do need to invest in this research. Could I just change the subject slightly? I really think that the federal government has a huge responsibility to educate the populace on critical metals. And the reason that I say this is that it impacts immediately on investment. If the population doesn't know why we're hunting niobium or why we're looking for rare earths, then why the hell should they, sorry, I shouldn't swear, why should they actually invest? And I'll give you a really good example. If we take niobium, how many people know that niobium has the highest threshold of superconductivity of any element? Well, you could say, who cares? But the point that I'm going to make is that perhaps we are interested in magnetic levitation trains, and for that you need niobium. How many people know this? Could you imagine a Canada in which we can actually have a super train that goes from Montreal to Vancouver in 8-10 hours? This is not pie in the sky. The Chinese already have one operating at over 600 kilometers an hour just outside Shanghai. The Japanese are planning to have a maglev train running from Tokyo to Nagoya, a distance of 300 kilometers, and they're going to do that in about 40 minutes. So this is something that we could educate the populace about, and that would drive investment in the critical metals area. I've just given you one example, but there are many examples like that. I know it changed the subject, but I really wanted to hammer this point through.
That's a good point.
Well, I appreciate the information. I'm going to go back to transportation, right? So what is the scale of this? Is this something we need a steady stream of semi-trailers? Do we need a rail transport? Or is it something like diamonds where you can, I don't have any idea of the scale of the finished product. Diamonds you can fly out of the mine in a Twin Otter, right? So
Exactly. And it depends enormously on the critical metal that you're talking about. For example, if we were talking about lithium, and we've talked a lot about lithium, then what is the ore mineral? It happens to be this mineral spodumene. If you're going to extract the lithium from the spodumene on site, there's a huge capital investment to do this. If, however, you make a spodumene concentrate, the mineral that's containing it, well, you are going to have a lot of material that you're actually going to have to transport out. So there is basically some sort of compromise somewhere between how much you actually extract on site, how expensive it is to do this, both in terms of capital expenditure as well as just operating expenses. And so it's a difficult question to answer, because really we need a lot more research in this area.
Thank you. So thank you for that excellent question and excellent response. So colleagues, we're down to our last round. Mr. Tucker for 5, Mr. Gay for 5, and Monsieur Simard for 2.5 to conclude our testimony, our questioning of witnesses, and then I have a short request of the committee at the end of our meeting. But on to you, Mr. Tucker.
I'd like to learn a little bit more about the finite business. Understand it's sold in pounds. What is the world price of graphite right now?
The world price for active anode material, so it's transformed graphite, there is, I would say, very few reliable indexes. One that we follow in our offtake agreement, it's Benchmark Mineral Intelligence from UK. It's about, I would say, $7,000 per ton, so $7 per kilogram of active anode material. It costs, the good thing we have in Canada is cheap hydro. It helps a lot. Having the mine close to the transformation site, everything we are building, we can do this transformation for a give or take $3.8 of OPEX. So OPEX, we're very competitive, but we need to build those projects, and construction costs are important. We need to amortize those assets, need to make a profit because cost of capital isn't zero here. So that's the challenge to make a good project, but it's doable.
That's wild. Like for $7,000 for a ton, and some of those production costs, we're lowest in the world. We should be leading the world. How many thousands of pounds of graphite have we exported this year?
Inactive anode material is 100% coming from China.
So China.
Yeah.
In Africa, I understand.
Not active anode material. So flake graphite, the concentrate of graphite, you're right. In Canada, we are a producer in flake graphite, about 2% of the market, not so big. Yeah. Because we have one mine, it's depleted, and the cost of operation is quite high because they're scratching the bottom of the pit.
And I understand it takes 18 years now under liberal regulation to get a new mine up and running. So there's nothing in probably my working lifetime that's going to be running, unfortunately. But there's other countries that are finding capital, and it sounds like you have a specific issue with raising capital here in Canada, but the Chinese has figured it out. Other companies have figured it out. It must be some of the over-regulation that the Liberals have introduced in the last 10 years that have extended the mine's development time. Is that accurate?
Well, we have this opportunity with our project to be this big mine of the J7. We've done all the hard work on permitting already. We had the chance to be managed by the provincial Ministry of Environment. So
I do respect the Constitution, and I do believe Quebec is probably positioned properly to best regulate this. I'm going to cede my time to my colleague Samar for the last 2 minutes and 16 seconds.
Merci. Vous voyez, même au comité.
Thank you. See, even here we have equalization. It's interesting. So I liked your intervention, sir. I understand that the new critical material, rare earths and everything are following very complex processes. And so one of the issues would be to make sure that it is not as risky for companies to use these minerals. Did I understand you right? Yes. That's what we've heard our presenters who presented on rare earths. So if we had a lot of critical minerals in a selected region where we could refine them and create a hub, would we be able to go forward faster then? I think the answer should be yes. If we can take the risk out of the opportunity for exploration and the use of these minerals, it would definitely be a good thing. So from exploration to extraction, it should be an easier process. Thank you so much. It's always very interesting to ask a question when we know that the witness is going to say yes as an answer. It's always a good thing. Mr. Laberge, as of today, if we're looking at the Port of Saguenay's capacity, do we have the infrastructure in the Port of Saguenay to answer to the demand? It depends on the volume that we have to export. If we have large volumes with time, we still have a certain capacity to be able to accommodate, but if the demand increases, then we'll need more capacity.
On to Mr. Gay, then Monsieur Samar for a final 2.5 minutes. But Monsieur Gay, you have 5 minutes.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. To Mr. Desaulniers, the federal government has a limited capacity money-wise. We are spending taxpayers' money, of course. Mr. Carney wishes to attract hundreds of thousands of millions in private capital. You've talked about shareholders and investors. What I'm interested in is to know where the federal government could invest $1 to produce $10 in private investments. What should we do? What are the conditions, the best regions, according to your experience, where we should invest? Last week, I was with a delegation of the government of Quebec to meet clients in Japan and Korea. And so I've had privileged in conversation with the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Investment to promote investing in Canada. And that's what we're doing with Mitsui, Panasonic, and all G7 countries. There's this same issue of finding alternatives to procurement in China. So we're trying to be a leader in Canada. And that's what we could offer to the G7 that would be the best, is projects that are ready to be funded with the necessary tools to make sure that there's no more risks in these projects so that we can start the construction and sell the necessary quantities to allied countries. That's a leadership role that we could have in this sector. So what I'm hearing right now from government initiatives is to try to do something else to compete against China their way, which means just funding with zero capital cost. We can't do this here in Canada, so we need to find the right funding, to have the right procurement, to find contracts. Like what the Canadian Growth Fund has been doing to make sure that we seize this mandate and we push it to the next level. That's what is going to allow us to stand out in the G7 and encourage our capital market. What can we do to incentivize the market to invest here? We have examples in the United States. They are being very creative and they are finding necessary investments for projects with these tools. So what can we do here in Canada with similar tools that are much cheaper but much more efficient to get this capital market? Thank you.
Question for you. So I'm an investor, and you describe a process. Is my camera and my Zoom working?
Yes, you just broke up for a little bit there. Just
For a little bit.
repeat your question, please.
I'm back. Okay. Mr. William Jones, I'm an investor. If I'm an investor, I love the idea to having access to rare earth critical mineral within a couple of 100 kilometers from a major center. My transportation costs are going to be low. I'm going to have access to. So anyway, of course, there would be enthusiasm from the investor market for this, which is what you're suggesting. So what's missing? What's the one thing that's missing? Is it because we don't know the process for the type of geology that you're talking about? Needs to be refined before the investor shows up and says, fantastic, we can do it close to Timmins.
I think that what is actually missing is that we need to, many of these deposits, well, let's say complexes, are close to major centers, but they've suffered from a lack of exploration. For example, this company that I'm representing today, IEP, they've got an interesting property. There's been no drilling there. There's some exposure, and they've been trying to basically raise enough money to actually have some exploration going. So we need to promote that exploration. That property will just stand there unexplored. It was explored in the 1950s. I pointed out to you that in the 50s, there was a resource of about 150 million tons of niobium. Lowish grade, but if you open pitted, it could actually be a potentially economic resource. What is missing there is there's been no exploration of the rare earths ever, but the potential is enormous. We need to have a company actually with enough money to start drilling holes to actually see if that resource is there. And there are lots of these little companies that own claims on projects that are close to major centers, but they don't have the money to actually make the next step, and they can't interest the majors because they haven't gone far enough.
Mr. Simard, the last question round to you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I wish to thank each witness. I'd encourage you to table a brief if there's any information you want to add to facilitate the work of our analysts. Could be a very good idea. Today, we were supposed to hear Louis Ouellette, who unfortunately did not testify about the Northern Corridor. I'd like to get back to that for you, Mr. Laberge. The federal government is trying to have critical minerals. There are lots of them in Northern Ontario, Northern Quebec, but we knew we have to improve the fluidity of transportation. We don't have a map in front of us, but if we did, and I invite you to table one, we could identify manning projects around a railway that exists already that should be upgraded. And then we'd see that that railway can easily go to the Port of Saguenay. What kind of investment is needed in the short term, be it in the Port of Saguenay or for railways? I'd invite you to table documents about that. Well, I can talk to you about investments that are needed at the port. in the relatively short term, we're talking about $150 million for improvements to port amenities, $150 million as well to put in place infrastructure for industrial development, basic infrastructure, and money is needed for energy from Hydro-Québec and for natural gas. So we are familiar with those amounts, and we're prepared to go forth very quickly to put in place that infrastructure. If we're talking about railways, there are some figures that were proposed for the upgrade of the railway network that could also be done in phases to improve those sectors, $700 million. Now, that has nothing to do with investment required to have these critical minerals go from northern Ontario to Hudson Bay. Well, to my knowledge, the rails exist. We're talking about upgrades, not new corridors. We're talking about railways that exist in mining areas that are very prolific right now. We're not talking about the whole country, but very prolific areas with existing railways that require a bit of upgrade but could connect two provinces. So that's where the opportunity lies. It's quickness, it's quick service. It already works. It could work even better. And there are projects already underway in those sectors. Thank you.
For our witnesses, and on your behalf, let me thank our witnesses for very informative testimony. I think you could tell MPs were very engaged in the discussion today, and as Monsieur Samar mentioned, please, if you would like to submit a brief, I know it would be welcomed by us and by our analysts. And may I give just a final shout out to Professor Williams-Jones for getting us all excited about rare earths. I married a geologist's daughter, and I did not hear the terms niobium or carbonatites, and so thank you for introducing those new terms, and obviously this very, very exciting field that you were involved with, and thank you, Ms. Vasyukova, for joining us as well. So, colleagues, just before we break, the clerk has reminded me that we have another study on forestry coming up, and it's suggested that we submit our witness lists on or before October 13th. So that the analysts can start working on panels acceptable to, and as you know, these are living lists, so we do adjust them as the study goes on, but we'd appreciate your witness lists being submitted on or before October 13th, and with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. McKinnon, seeing no objection, we are adjourned.